Hi, everybody. David Noor back with another fantastic conversation with an executive that I've known for a number of years and admired a great deal. And we want to give you a preview. By the way, we're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and X. And this time of the year, if you know me, if you know our work, we're really excited about our upcoming Relationship Economics Summit. This is the fourth year we're doing this. And it's really a great event that allows us to bring executive clients, partners, friends together to really share challenges, opportunities. Front end of the week is a leadership development program. Back end of the week is really an executive symposium. And what I love is you get very different clients in different stages of their company maturity, in their different challenges and opportunities. These are confirmed executives, very intimate gathering of these senior folks. And my guest today is Russ Bernthal. Russ, welcome.
Well, thank you, David. I appreciate being here.
It is great to have you. And for the audience, what I can't take credit for this. My wife and I attended the Renaissance Weekend several years ago. And if you know anything about that program, they bring the attendees into the agenda. And the premise is there's a lot of wisdom in the room. You know, instead of just talking heads in front of the room, what do we incorporate? What do we engage a broader audience in? And that's what I started doing from year one. And so I'm elated that Russ has agreed to join us. And I'll put the URL of the page. You're welcome to go check it out. But I asked Russ, and I reach out to executives, and instead of me telling them what I want them to talk about, I ask them, tell me about a topic you're passionate about. Tell me about a topic that you feel that you can contribute to the conversation, discussion, as much as you're going to, take away from the insights that others share, and without missing a beat. I love this about Russ. Without missing a beat, he came back with, and Russ, I want to talk, ask you to share a little more about your background and where you've been and what you've done. But I love the fact that you jumped in with a lot of what we're doing together, which is really mentoring early stage founders. So why don't we start? And that's really the topic of today's session. Why don't we talk about your background, a little about where you've been, what you've done, how you've kind of gotten here?
Sure. I have been a little bit of a serial entrepreneur, but have spent time in big companies as well. So I launched my first company when I was 24 years old. And sort of a funny story about it, we were an IBM reseller. IBM PCs had just come out. We were selling IBM PCs. We were selling accounting software, and we were running around to businesses telling them they no longer needed accountants. They could have this great computer with word processing. Well, we expanded into retail point of sale, and I started going into different stores, bike shops, and things, trying to sell to them. And they said, we don't have time to talk to you. We can't leave our store. So I rented my next door neighbor's RV. I set up the point of sale system in the RV, filled the fridge with sodas and beer and wine, and would drive up and yank them out of their stores, and they'd see demos. So that was my real first experience in being an entrepreneur. I went on and I did 4 or 5 other companies. One was in cellular. I was very early stage entry into that, where we created billing systems for the cellular phones. Ended up with about a 95% market share in all of North America. I migrated into some consulting. Eventually, I got into a company and joined a small company called Tangent, and I became their CEO and president. And they were very, very small. I wrote a new business plan, gave it to the owner and said, if you want to do this, I'd be happy to join you and lead your company. And if you don't, that's fine too. And he said he loved it. It turned his company upside down on its strategy. And we went on and grew phenomenally. And within 2 years, we sold it to Jack Henry and Associates, which today is an S&P 500 company. So they were about 300 million when we joined them, and today they're well over 2 billion. My partner retired after 2 years. I stayed around for 16 because I loved what the company stood for, and was part of acquisitions, bought a lot of companies, divested companies, got a chance to work with small businesses that needed direction. Had a wonderful time with it. And now I'm retired, but I'm sort of paying back. I'm spending a lot of time mentoring and helping smaller businesses grow and understand what they need to do if they want an exit strategy, how to sell. And it's a great thing to be able to give back like that.
I love that. So I have a question. Jack Henry, obviously you joined them at a good size and you scaled it to even a bigger size and worked together back then. What's the attraction to early stage kind of companies, startups, founders? What's drawing you other than giving back? Because it's so diametrically opposed to a large, established, well-oiled machine like Jack Henry.
I think the fun for me is that I see people that have a dream, just like I did when I started my first company. And the greatest thing in the world for me to be able to do is to help those people achieve that dream. There were people that helped me along the way, and I remember each and every one of them, including good bosses, bad bosses. You learn as much from a bad boss as a good boss. Lots of outside mentors, but it's helping them get to where they want to be. And if their goal is to sell their company and retire, and I can help them achieve that, that's so rewarding to me. I love that.
Is that one of the, for lack of a better word, readiness signals that when you meet a founder, you feel like they're, or I guess share, what makes you think that this person's ready to kind of build something and versus still back of a napkin idea stage?
Yeah, there's two things that I really look at, David. First of all, one of my mentors told me, always invest in the person, never invest in the product. And so, when I start to think about helping somebody, I look for that. You're a terrific example. Good people can do marvelous things. You're an author and a speaker. And look at what you're doing with Avnir. You're taking what you've learned and applying it to a business and create a software company. And I continue to marvel at how much you are able to do with the background that you have. It's amazing to me. And that just reinforces that the person is what matters. I look for integrity. I look for honesty. I look for drive, passion. And once I decide that somebody is really the right person to get involved with, then I start looking at the product. And then the product, I have to sort of decide, well, is it something that they are passionate about, but nobody else is? You've seen lots of people that buy stores and they put, the goofiest stuff in them because that's their hobby. And then their store goes out of business in a year. You can't have that with software. You have to build something, or any company. It's got to be something that the market is looking for. So I make sure that they understand the marketplace. They have a go-to-market strategy. They understand what they want out of it. And if they're really good people and those things match up, then we start talking about, working together.
Love it. And I often talk about exactly that. You're betting on the jockey and not the horse, first and foremost. But you also want the horse in the race and in the right race, right?
That's right. That's a great way to put it.
So it's a good way to think of it. Talk about blind spots. And you were very kind with your comments about me. I'm humbled by, Russ, how much I'm learning, because it is so different than what I've done for the last 2 decades in working with global clients. And you're right, leadership development and executive coaching and growth consulting is very different than now building a tech company. So what are the most common blind spots you see in early stage founders? What do they repeat regardless of industry?
Yeah, there's actually a couple. First is that I don't think they often realize that cash is king. And, sometimes they'll go out and they'll get $25,000 or $50,000 investor. Their friends and families are putting money in. Suddenly they have $500,000 and they think they can do everything with that. And that's such a mistake. You have to manage your cash. That's just an enormous problem. I helped one fellow along for a while, and he sent me a picture of his bank account for the company, and there was $1 million in it. And he was like, "I'm done. I've made it." And I said, "That's just the beginning. You have to now use that in the right way." I think that not having a long-term strategy is another problem for a lot of people. They have this idea and they think, I'm great. That first company I had that I mentioned, I had a partner. Never want to do that again on a 50-50 split. But his vision was that in 1 year we would have a yacht and we'd be sitting on Lake Michigan running the company from a yacht. And I didn't understand that at the time. And I'm scrambling and working hard, and it's really, really difficult. You have to have a common vision and a common direction of where you want to be, and you have to be committed to it. If you're going to do it part-time, it just doesn't work. Anybody that's going to invest in your company is going to ask you, are you doing this full-time? And if you're not, they just go the other way.
For our audience, if you just joined us, you're listening to Russ Bernthal, former SVP at Jack Henry. When I met him, he was president of Profit Stars. We had a great chance to work together several times. And more recently, he's been an invaluable advisor, investor, friend to me and to our Avnir team building our tech, AI native tech platform. He's also joining us for the Relationship Economics Summit coming up mid next month, and we're talking about his topic and something he's passionate about, which is mentoring early stage founders. Russ, I also equate early stage or early kind of phase company founders with our kids. Which the reason I bring it up is mentorship needs, I think you would agree, a balance. How do you balance giving founders? As an operator, I love your directness, right? So your guidance without robbing them of that independence to fall and make mistakes and learn and grow through that experience.
Yeah, I think that it's really important for them to understand that I'm an advisor and not a dictator. And so when we start our conversations, it's exactly that. It's a conversation. And I'll tell you that every meeting I have, and you do this too, I request them to send me an agenda of what they want to talk about. Tell me what are the issues that are on your mind that we're going to talk about. And they have to send that to me a day in advance. And they send that to me. And then when they ask me the questions, I ask them how they're thinking about it first and what they're thinking. And we chat about that and we go back and forth. And sometimes I'm just thinking out loud when we're talking about a problem. And sometimes I'm, giving advice. But in the end, I always make sure they understand that it's their decision, right or wrong. I'm just an advisor, one of many, hopefully, and hopefully they have many advisors that they lean on, and they have to balance all those different perspectives. I'll also tell you that when we meet the next time, I circle back to the items they gave me the time before. And I said, what did you decide about that? How did you handle it? What did you do? Would you do anything differently? And that way they learn from that. And that's really important that they have that opportunity to learn. The last thing would be that I have to be very, very careful to advise them if I think they're going to make a catastrophic mistake. Mm-hmm. And that comes with maturity and time in the industries and in business. And if I see that they're going to make a catastrophic mistake, that'll jeopardize their company, then I go out of my way to say, I'm your advisor, I'm helping you, it's your decision, but you need to know there's going to be extreme consequences with this. And you need to think really hard before you move down that path.
What I really appreciate, and you and I've shared this conversation, is that you bring an opportunity to the table. You and I talk about it. I love how we were aligned, and you asked some great questions to make sure that, again, I'm looking at not just, I use the football analogy, not just a quarterback on the field with what plays do I have, but am I also looking at as an offensive coordinator from the box to see the whole field? Yeah. And in terms of, don't get distracted with this potential merger, or this company might be too small or not the right, focus for you, or here's how to upgrade your talent, all of those things. And for our audience, if you know founders, if you are one, if you love one, how lonely the job gets and just the grind that you go through in an early stage to build and scale something that is viable. So Russ, I really appreciated that, again, that sounding board in that process.
Well, think about that text I sent you one day, and you were headed down a path, and I said, I need you to understand, I really think this is wrong, but it's your company, and if we come out of this and you decide you're going to do this, I'm going to still support you 110%. But behind the closed doors, you and I are going to talk because I think you're making a mistake. And that's a great way for us to operate, because you know that I'm not trying to belittle you or cause you a problem. I'm trying to actually help you and let you know it's a serious problem.
Love that. Talking about tough decisions, I think you would agree talent, especially early talent, is one of those that are both critical and emotionally charged, right? You in a non-creepy way, you fall in love with someone that you think is a great guy or a great, woman leader and can help. And then, you figure out, are they, you kind of get blind spots. Are they the right leader for the right time and the right, capabilities that the business need? How do you coach a founder through those really critical people and pivotal people decisions?
Well, a lot of that comes down to learning how to interview right. And most people don't know how to interview right. They say, have you done this or have you done that? And the real question needs to be, tell me how you did that and what the results were of doing that. And, in our minds, we all have a checklist of, 10 things I'm looking for in this candidate. And if you don't dig deep and press them hard, you don't get the right answers. And you just can't take somebody's word that they've done it. You always have to say, give me examples of the results. Now, one of the problems in hiring too is we all tend to hire people that are very similar to ourselves. And I think good leaders need to understand where their holes are, because as good as you or I might think we are, we've got gaping holes in our experience and our knowledge base. And so I'm always looking for people that fill those gaps for me. And sometimes, when I define a position, I'll write down where I'm weak relative to that position, and I look for those things specifically. And founders don't always do that. They want somebody that's going to be a cheerleader and rah-rah around their product and say, hey, this is great. And, oh, you're the best leader in the world. You don't want that. You want people that are going to challenge you and help you become better. It took me a long, long time to learn that in my career. And I'm embarrassed to say it. It took me until I had, several, 1,000 some people working for me at Jack Henry to realize I couldn't do it all myself. And as a founder, you tend to think you can do everything, and you hear it all the time. As a founder of a company, it's small, you got to do everything, but you have to know what you can't do. And then you got to fill those spots with people that can do it.
Russ, what's the old analogy? The painter's house always needs painting.
Sure.
I've got a whole new level of respect for founders, operators now, because for years, I coached executives that the reason you're struggling to go on a vacation, the reason you're struggling to let go and, let go of some of that control, is that you've hired projects, not peers. I've always believed projects need babysitting. Projects need micromanaging. Projects need to be told what to do.
Yep.
Peers get the vision. They're excited. They're empowered. They're enabled. They go figure it out. They get resourceful. They get creative, and you don't have to worry about all that. And I think at this level, it is so critical to surround yourself with peers, because you kind of need everybody, rowing with the same velocity and veracity in the same direction.
You're dead on, and sort of the way I think about some of that is, when you sit down with your people and you're trying to manage them, I used to set a goal that's out there a ways, and then I let them run towards that goal. And if you think you're trying to get from point A to point D, you can get there lots of different routes. And so I keep an eye on them, and just, empowering people to do the job is not enough. You need to set that course, let them run it. And then when they get off course, you got to tap the rudder a little and bring them back on. But you don't tell them how to do it. You've got to let them have that freedom. But you tap them when they're getting out of line with it. And that works really, really well. And it's the same principle you would use with, people in a small organization. When you're the founder, you've got to empower people to do their job, and then you got to tap the rudder when they get off course.
For our audience, again, if you just joined us, you're listening to Russ Bernthal, former SVP at Jack Henry. We're hosting a Relationship Economics Summit this October. And Russ is kind enough to not just join us for this event. It's an intimate gathering of senior executive clients, partners, and friends. But he's actually going to do a session on mentoring early stage founders for the executive attendees. And if you just go to Avnir.com, I think we've got that in here, Avnir.com/RES, RES is the Relationship Economics Summit. Front end of the week is a leadership development program. Back end of the week is an executive symposium by invite only. And we can't wait to have Russ share more of this at the event. So Russ, switch gears. One of the things, you took a page out of the David Knorr playbook, and I love your comment about relationship market fit. Talk about how a founder knows that they're building the right kind of relationship ecosystem of advisors, of customers, of capital partners. How do I know they're the right ones for what I need?
Yeah, it goes back a little bit to recognizing that none of us have all the skills we need. So in the last company I had founded that we sold to Jack Henry, I didn't have a board, but I had a group of advisors, and I didn't pull them all together at the same time. But I knew, I was going to want to sell the company. We were going to want to sell. And so I had somebody on there that had sold lots of companies. And I would go to him and talk about valuations and what we needed to do to become better. And I had somebody that was an expert in sales. And I would go to them and I'd talk about that and go to market strategies. It's about not having a big ego. It's about saying, I have to sit back and learn and take advice from other people. And so I always looked for folks that fill those gaps and then bring them and talk to them and thank them for what they do. I think you find that most people want to help you if you're come hat in hand and you're humble and you're contrite. They will do anything for you. It's absolutely amazing. And all you have to do is be open to taking that, but build a relationship. Your book, Relationship Economics, is so great. You talk about all these relationships out there and which ones you're going to manage and who you're going to call at 3 a.m. You're going to have that group at 3 a.m. That's your company people that you're going to talk to, your advisors, and you have to know who they are and you have to go find them and you have to fill your own gaps with those folks.
So I love that you've also interacted with our advisory board, and we do a regular quarterly updates with those folks. And what advice do you give founders on managing board relationships, especially when you got tensions that run high around performance or strategy or your progress, or I think as a founder you beat yourself up enough of all the things I'm not doing. How do you make sure that's a productive, constructive, what I call feed forward board, not just a feedback?
Yeah, I actually have been transitioning one company I'm involved in the board with, and the CEO and I are working very closely on this. And traditionally, that company has been reporting to the board. And so we sit down for 2 or 3 hours and they give us metrics and they show us stuff. And we started to have conversations about it. And to the credit of the CEO, he started the idea with me and said, I'm thinking about changing this. What are your thoughts? And where we really have landed is that board is now becoming a problem-solving board rather than a reporting board. So he can get the reporting packet to the board ahead of time. We all know how to read a financial statement. We all can look at a sales pipeline. But he comes to the board and we spend very little time on that. And he now says, these are the 3 major issues I'm faced with, and let's talk about it. Because if you selected the right board of directors, they're going to have input for that. And they're going to give you good advice and you can discuss it. But that board then has to be a, sort of a risk-free environment. The board has to agree that they're going to operate that way. And then, though, when there are problems and things are wrong, somebody on that board has to stand up and say, okay, you need corrective action here. And it becomes a different conversation. But that doesn't have to be in the board meeting. That can be a separate call, a conversation. But I'm encouraging these younger companies to really use their board as a problem-solving board as opposed to just tell me what you did.
And again, I love that learning and growth opportunity because, full disclosure, first couple of quarters, hey, let me give you an update, and your investors, your advisors, let me tell you what we've been doing. And it dawned on me, what exactly that? Why don't we send that material in advance, have them review it, and then hopefully use that time to either ask for help or questions, or have them kind of, a smaller breakout session to kind of work through something. And again, exactly right, a problem solving. One of the things is you talked about cash is king. You also realize that fundraising, Russ, I've shared this. I'm a reluctant fundraiser because it's so distracting. I'd rather be talking to customers. I'd rather be working on my product. But you do have to go find the right kind of capital partners in that ecosystem. So what's the biggest mistake you see founders make with capital? And how do you mentor them to avoid it?
So once they have the capital,
or in their pursuit of capital,
or in their pursuit, I think that when they're pursuing capital, they don't understand what PE firms and angel investors are looking for. And so you need to spend time with some of those people in a safe environment where they talk to you about what they're after. They don't care anything about the fact that your employees are happy and this and that. They are putting money in you because they want to make 3x what they put in, maybe more. And you have to understand that. You have to understand the criteria under which they're going to evaluate you. I can't tell you how many times I see people go in front of a PE firm and they haven't put their material together the right way. They're hitting the things they think are interesting, not what the PE firm thinks is interesting. So you got to climb into the skin of who you're trying to get to give you capital and present with that in mind. Once they get the capital, though, again, it can't be a scenario where we're going to spend free. We've just gone through a pretty heavy downturn in the markets, and for the last 2.5 years, there isn't money. There's a ton of money sitting on the sideline, but every company I'm involved with, we go to them, we tell them, there's no more money. You better figure out how to cut expenses. You better figure out how to sell better. You better figure out something, because when this is gone, you're out of business. And thousands of small businesses have gone under because they think they can just go get more money.
I've always believed the lack of that capital actually makes you more resourceful, makes you more creative, makes you more scrappy, makes you more thinking through how, and by the way, customers are the least expensive capital, right? How do we go sell? How do we go to market? How do we get more done with less?
Yeah.
And just, you're exactly right. That capital becomes your lifeline. How do I stretch that as long as possible? So in the last couple of minutes of our time together, Russ, can you think of either looking ahead, challenges or opportunities that you expect today's early stage founders are going to face, that weren't maybe as prevalent or as pronounced a decade ago?
Oh, a decade ago, we saw guys going out and getting capital over and over again. So they go raise $3 million, they give themselves a $250,000 salary, and when they ran out, they'd go get another round. And they do it over and over and over again. And like I said, when the market changed a few years ago, there was no money to go get, or people weren't handing it out, and they would just, go under. I think that's a huge difference. I think our regulatory environment is sort of difficult these days. It's always been difficult. It seems to be easing up a little bit depending on what industry you're in. I believe the need for people is changing dramatically. If you're in a technology business and you're not doing something with AI, you're not going to get money from anybody. And you have to be touching on AI. And for non-technology companies, you need to be thinking about your customers and what they want, because buying patterns for customers are changing today as well. Retail is changing enormously. The big box stores are growing like mad. Inflation is affecting all of us, and And that changes the way we need to think about our businesses. So there's a lot of variables in there depending on what industry you're in.
If you missed this session, you missed a good one. Russ Bernthal is the former SVP at Jack Henry. When I met him, president at Profit Stars, and I'm elated that he's going to be joining us at our upcoming Relationship Economics Summit. He's going to do a session on mentoring early stage founders. As an early stage founder, I can attest to this. There's enormous value in that wisdom and the experiences that executives like Russ, and Russ in particular, bring, because you can't know it all. And I told a group the other day, I'm never afraid of what I don't know. I'm always afraid of what I don't know. Yeah. And if you're surrounded by people who genuinely have a vested interest in you and your success, then they become invaluable in sharing that. So for our audience, again, Relationship Economics Summit is coming up for executive clients, partners, friends. Front end of the week is our Next Up leadership program. It's a fantastic chance for 2 days to get out of your day-to-day obligations and really work on your personal, professional aspirations. Jolie Gaston and our team has done a great job. You can go to avnir.com/res, R-E-S, to learn more and apply to join us. Would love to have you. On that note, Russ, thank you. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks, David.
Good to see everybody. Thanks, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.